Thank you so much for sticking around. I know this is sort of the almost last panel standing between you and the beer. So good afternoon, my name is Lucy. I'm a project manager for startups for Bitkom. And I have the pleasure of presenting the very last panel on the Black stage today. When we were planning this session a couple of months ago, we couldn't have known that our topic would actually be quite hot at this very moment, because what we're going to talk about is how startups can shape public discourse in the modern world. And with the elections in the US 2 weeks ago, obviously that is a very important topic right now, and it has been hugely discussed all over the media. So there have been talks about Facebook bubbles, there have been talks about wrong poll makers, and how this is all going to work out in the future. So suddenly, our topic is very, very relevant to society, and I would like you to meet two great founders who are working on just this. Please welcome with me Frey, founder of Opinary, and Janina Mütze, founder of Civey. Would you raise a hand? So how do we do this Meet the Founders session? Both girls are going to present their startups to you. Pia goes first, and then after we would like to discuss with each other and also with you, obviously.
Yes, it's on. Great. I'm Pia, and I'm co-founder of Opinary, and I want to give you a quick overview on what Opinary is doing and how we created a new way of interaction between content creators and users, and what we learned by it. So I used to be, or I'm still a journalist, but I used to work as a journalist, and I was always very irritated by one thing that I observed in any newsroom I worked in, which was a completely dysfunctional way of interaction between users and newsrooms. So there's 0.5% of users engaged in comment sections, and especially one phrase that's common in every newsroom I worked in, which is, never read the comments, just don't. And I thought this is bad, because when there's no interaction going on between newsrooms and users, we have the bad effect that there are filter bubbles created of newsrooms who live in their very comfortable perspective of the world, and users that are referred to as the trolls or the grumpy old men that troll around in the comment section, but they don't learn from each other and they don't understand each other. And what the effect can be was very visible on last week's US elections, where there were many newsrooms heavily shocked by what users actually think. So what we with Opinary aimed for was creating a new way of interaction between users and newsrooms. So we wanted to orient users in debates and helping them to escape their echo chamber by giving them an understanding of the full range of opinion that is out there. We wanted to empower them to share their opinion easily, because not everybody has the time to write a comment. And we wanted to help newsrooms to understand their audiences, because there is a great lack of understanding in what the public opinion is. And we also wanted to monetize the user engagement we created, because we knew that engaged users are valuable users. So how it looks like is the tools are embedded in content, for example, here on The Guardian, and they ask a user a question. For example, who won the final presidential debate? And on this range between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, we showcase selected opinion from, in this case, Guardian writers, who had something to say on this and placed on this range between Hillary and Trump. And for users, we offer the chance to, or we empower them to share their own opinion by placing themselves on this range, after which they get to see what the public opinion of, in this case, 20,000 other users is. So this all got started on a very experimental level. We thought this is worth a try, this idea of visualizing debates. And what we saw from the very early beginning was that there is incredibly high interaction on this, of 25% of engaged users in average. So we started with just a few partners on an experimental level, and now accelerated to 32 million users every month, and working with all major German publishers, many UK publishers, and now expanding to the US. We are a venture-backed startup based in Berlin with 17 people. I'm sorry. So how does the monetization part work? We work with publishers and brands, and we offer brands the opportunity to place their own message and to build their own interaction within publishers' content. So in this example, after answering an editorial question, users get asked a second question, which is, should you rethink your savings after Trump's election? And this is sponsored by Deutsche Bank, because Deutsche Bank has content marketing on especially this topic. And they get extremely high interaction and engagement of their users, of their target groups that are especially interested in this particular topic, and build interaction and valuable traffic on their content marketing. The other thing publishers benefit from are insights. So what always irritated me was that as an editor, you don't know what users think about your topic and what about your coverage and how your coverage infects the public opinion out there. So on a dashboard, users get to see what's the current controversy of your users, where do your users agree on, and where are your users especially caring about. And what we learned by this, I know my time is over, so I'm skipping this, that newsrooms can be shocked by seeing their users' opinion. For example, on Brexit, we asked on June 23, one day before the referendum, 212,000 users how they feel about Brexit, should Britain leave the EU, and there was a strong tendency towards, yes, Britain should leave. And the newsrooms I spoke with about this, they couldn't believe it that their users actually thought this. And I think this is something we need to know as content creators of all kinds. So what we're doing is, on a baseline, creating a new way of interaction, getting the silent masses engaged, and breaking the filter bubble in order to avoid another shock Trump effect in future.
Hey everyone, my name is Janina. I'm co-founder of Civey, and we tackle a very similar problem like Pia does with her company. We do polling. So I hope you don't run away. I know that polling doesn't have the best reputation nowadays. I think we all been shocked by that this man won the elections in the US, but it's true. So why were we so shocked? I think it was basically because no one told us before. No polling institute was right on that, like almost no one. I think there was one with the LA Times that saw it happening. But we were shocked, and I want to use the next 4.5 minutes to convince you that the future of polling isn't over, and that there is still hope, especially with new technologies. So, nevertheless, there are problems on the market, and I would like to tell you first about what actually the problems are in the market. And my biggest guess is that the costs of survey methods are so fucking high that it doesn't make sense to really dig deep into the data. I mean, you have phone pollsters on the one side that conduct their surveys with huge call centers, and they go out, call like 300,000 people for just one single poll, and make it incredibly expensive to get answers to one survey. Or you have online polling institutes, right? On the other side, most of you might know YouGov. What they do is they pay their users for votes. So every time you, as a user, you go in there, you give your opinion, you get 50 cents. It doesn't make it less expensive in the end. You still have to pay for the votes. So when we started our company in 2015, we thought we must tackle this problem of bad quality in polling with reducing the costs, because this is quite obvious. This is the biggest problem that the market now has. And I won't bore you with our statistical algorithms that work in the background that make it possible that you see a representative result in real time. But I want to focus more on the two more obvious shifts that we did. First one is we took a very simple lesson from the entire social media or online economy, and that is, if you want something from the user, you need also to give him or her something. And to make you understand what we want from the user, we don't only want to have his or her vote, which is maybe on this question, should Merkel candidate again? Could be yes. Apparently it was yes for me, or whoever took the photo. We don't only want to have the vote, we also need to know whether the user is a man or a woman, how old he or she is, if she or he lives in a suburb or in an urban region. In the end, we want to have a lot of valid data that we need to calculate good results. And instead of paying our users, we say, cool, if you give us those information, we do something that hasn't been there yet. We give you the result, like the real-time representative result, that if you do a poll with another pollster, you would pay hundreds of thousands for that, right? That is new, that hasn't been there before. And if you ask now how we earn our money, good question. I will just tell you in one sentence, because I see the time running there as well, that these information will tell you about how the society thinks. This is valid information about whether the Germans think that Merkel should candidate or not. Very valid information, but if you use data on a professional way, if you, for example, run a campaign as a politician, or you work in a PR agency, or you, maybe that's more interesting for this audience, you want to launch a product, then you need more detailed data. You need to really understand what your target group thinks. So this could be, you want to launch a product to 15 to 25-year-old hipsters from big cities, then you need to know their opinion. And this is something that we would sell. But nevertheless, we give a huge transparency to the users who give us their vote and their data. Second thing we did is, and there I think we are quite similar in our approach, we don't build up our own panel by us on our own. We do that as well. We also have a marketing team, but we don't build up a call center. This is not our job. What we do is we use those organizations who have already a reach. And these are, you might know it, newspapers. So when we launched our product 3 months ago, we went online with Tagesspiegel, monitored the Berlin elections, and then went to bigger partners like Cicero, Welt. We're online also with change.org, because you can reach a lot of very interested and motivated voters there. And yeah, that's the second big change compared to other polling institutes. So maybe before we launched, I told you that we launched 3 months ago, we've been always faced with this big question, will the user actually vote? I mean, you don't give him anything, you just give him information about what Germany thinks, what the society thinks. Is that even valid for the user? Maybe they want money more than the information. And our experience is, no, they won't. That we have launched 3 months ago, and our panel is already as large as the panels of most of our competitors today. And we experience that voters are very motivated because they get for the first time data that they didn't have access to before. And I see time is running out. I would say you try it out, because then my prognosis will be true that in 2017 we will have the biggest panel in Germany. And thank you so much.
Thanks, ladies, for the presentations. Like being interested in media, I studied media management. I had followed the story of these both startups. So your startups weren't new to me. However, while I was researching for this panel, I did wonder, like, did these people see this sort of crisis coming? So what was sort of your starting point? I know you mentioned a little bit, but what was, the tipping point when you thought, I need to do something?
Go ahead.
So yeah, it was more recent for us. Maybe that makes sense that we start. So I started the company from a very personal feeling that me as a person, I don't have access to data and politics. They're just not available for someone who's politically interested or who worked like me in politics before. It's just very expensive, and you would always be in a cloud somehow because you wouldn't know what people actually think. And I think this leads to this huge gap that we saw recently with media polling institutes and the actual voters that voted for something completely different in the US. I must say I was shocked as well last Tuesday, but from a professional perspective, I think I had some access to the problem before, yes.
It's interesting because you said you had access to the problem before. We did as well, of course. We did see thousands of users saying we want Trump. We also saw many thousands of users saying we want Brexit. But I catch myself seeing this data every morning, reviewing hundreds of thousands of users' opinion, but still somehow being seduced by my comfortable Facebook timeline and thinking this can't be true. And now users are saying we don't want Merkel anymore, by a very big majority saying Merkel should go. And it's hard to believe that these users tend to be true. There's millions of users. And regarding the question how we got started, it was very similar, just sitting in the newsroom, seeing a moderation team of 20 editors who were moderating 0.5% of trolls in the comment section, and having no meaningful idea about where the audience actually stands. And I worked for Die Welt, which has a very engaged engaged audience in comparison, and very controversial audience, but they were a black box from the newsroom perspective, and I thought this is not possible. And then I discussed it with my brother in Christmas holidays, and then we got started from there.
So you basically both want to get closer to opinions, that's my impression. So how do you think technology helps or maybe also hinders the shaping of public opinion?
I had this discussion yesterday on this dinner where you invited us with a lot of people, actually. And
for the audience, there was a speakers dinner yesterday, and the two ladies sat with Jeff Jarvis, who obviously is one of the leading media experts of the world. So just, to give you some background on this.
And it was a very interesting conversation because I was sitting there with like highly educated people, very intellectual talk, and there were a lot of people who said, like, I don't trust polling anymore. We don't need polling anymore. Polling is missing empathy. And this is where I get a bit scared, actually, because when people say that they go back from data and just go back to their own gut feeling, then we do exactly that what we critique on the other side, right? When people don't trust the media anymore. And so I think, like, honestly, data will always be a very important part of getting a feeling to for the opinion and society. And I mean, it's not said the first time, but I think this bias you have when you call someone as a pollster, or when you have like a talk with a person that is sitting at the same table, this goes away, right? When you ask in the internet, because when you ask online, and what we see in our raw data as well, is that people can answer very honest because they're not controlled by me sitting on the other side of the computer. They're very honest and say very honestly that I don't want to vote for Merkel anymore, or I want Trump to become president. And I'm pretty sure they probably wouldn't tell me that when I would meet them in a bar.
I had many similar conversations, also about the question if the technology we're using is increasing the echo chamber effect and having a negative course on polarization in society, which may be, but even if we need a way to mirror this and to get an idea of this and to make people aware of this, and in the best case, break those echo chambers. So I think, of course, we do have a high risk with the technology we're using, but even then we do have a high responsibility in using it in the best way we can.
So you both work with a lot of publishers. How do they use their data? I mean, yours is a tool that they put on your website, yours as well, but do they actually use their data? Do they change something about their habits of reporting?
I don't think that's at least for traditional media, that's not the habit, that you try to please your users in what you write. But I think you write differently when you know that in how far a catchy headline, like I don't know, like Clinton should go to hell, how this will affect your audience and the public opinion. And having a barometer on these effects is a big change, is a real game changer in newsroom workflows.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen any changes, or like how do they use your polls? Because you've done pretty correct, accurate results. For example, the elections in Berlin. So how do they use those results?
So, like, I think our tool has been used by the publishers in two ways. Like, as a first step, they embed our polls because it's interactive. It keeps the reader longer on their website. It keeps them more interactive with the newsroom, and gives them also a feeling about what their own readers think. And then as a second step, what we can also offer, since we provide representative data, we give them content, right? You can, like with this result screen I showed you with our widget, they can just write an article about that. They just add some detailed results to that, and they can write about the topics that obviously their voters are interested in. And to add something, what we also realized is that the newsrooms are very interested in what their own readers think. And this is also a feature that we can provide. We have like a weighting system for the entire society, but we can also filter by this newspaper's readers only. And most of the newspapers don't want those results to be published because because they don't want to be this right-wing magazine with only right-wing readers. But still, for their own work, it's important to understand where their own readers stand, and maybe also where they can have like an educational approach or like think about their own content a bit more.
And especially one interest that I'm seeing is how their audiences compares to other publishers' audiences. Who is more right-wing? There's a great interest in this, yes.
And how do you work with these outlets? Was it easy to convince them to use your solutions, for instance?
The need is actually just very, very big. So many publishers shut down their comment sections completely and somehow solved the problem, but not really. And so the doors were open. I'm not a salesperson, but we work with many publishers who reach out for us basically because they do have a problem, because they don't want to shut down their users and mute them, but they just don't have the resources usually to engage them with moderation teams that are extremely expensive and work intensive.
Mm-hmm. Anything to add?
Not really, no. I have exactly the same experience.
Okay. So you just launched in the US market. Do you see any differences of how they use the tool there?
The need is bigger.
Bigger?
Yes.
Oh.
because they just have they have a even more serious financial situation than here, so more comment sections are shut already. And especially now after Trump, of course, there is a great awareness that there's change needed in the way how they interact with their users. And they can't mock them, but they have to listen to them and they have to ask them, what do you think actually to break free from their comfortable newsroom echo chamber, and they're absolutely aware of this. So it's a bad time there, but it's a good time to go there.
That's actually a very nice ending to this session.
Wow.
Because time is up. Thanks everyone for listening. I really hope your tours will make a difference to our elections coming up in Germany next year, because really I don't fancy that sort of disaster here. Thank you so much for joining Hub Conference and coming here. Dirk, would you please come up, because I want a big round of applause for these two ladies.